Hey YouTube, welcome to another crypto market update. So in this video, we're going to be talking about BTC as well as Ripple or XRP. We haven't really talked about Ripple at all on the YouTube channel. We do cover it within the Discord, but we thought we'd share our information and our thoughts on the price action in this video. So let's start with BTC right now, looking on the weekly chart. So we cover this very often, so we're not going to get too in-depth with the weekly chart, but just going to talk about the recent price action. We do see this week's candle is looking pretty bearish. We do see a wick protruding out of the body, and it has moved pretty significantly to the downside, and it opened right around here. So it's looking pretty even. We did move more up than down, but we still have a lot of the week left. We don't have a whole lot of volume coming in, but obviously we still have a lot of time before this closes, so I'm sure we will see more volume come in. Not a whole lot more to talk about, and let's just continue on with the daily chart, because this is what we're going to be mainly talking about, is this long wick right here. And when we get into the smaller time frames, we will talk about more of the granular details as to why it actually broke back down and why we didn't instantly enter long here. So it looks like the market is moving a little bit down right now, which is good to see. Well, for our shorts anyways, not for the general market. But let's talk about this here for a second. So what happened in this candle right here is we had a slow move down, and then we held this little support right here. We can see that right around here. And what happened was the candle closed, or the candle opened right at the support there, and then got a significant amount of buy volume, pushing it right back up. And we unfortunately could not hold for the bulls, and then it got rejected right back down. Now this is going to indicate, for me, very bearish confidence in the market right now. We do see that there was a lot of volume attached to this candle, and the daily candles, each of them tell a story. And this, for me, is telling a story that there is confidence in the bears, and there is more sell pressure to come. We got more sell volume than the previous couple days. We can see that we've had more sell volume here than the previous 4 days, almost 5, even with this bullish candle right here. So that is going to signify that there is strong momentum coming to the downside, because the momentum from the high here got absolutely slammed, and then the day after, which is still the same day, I guess, just a little bit later, and we're seeing some more sell volume push the price down. Now, if we do see the price fall below here, there is going to be a key level of support around here, but if we do break this zone and hold, it's not much longer until we're going to hit our key zone of support of $6K, $5,800 zone. And the thing with support and resistances and key zones of supply and demand is they not only repel the price, but they also attract the price as well. So when the price is very close to a key zone, it tries to attract it, because the price is so close to that zone. Buyers or sellers are going to know to enter near that zone because of the technical analysis and the simple zones that we're able to identify. Now, we don't exactly know how far it will go or the aggression of the move, obviously. Now, we can see that in the past, we have seen some very, very big bounces and aggressive moves like we saw here. We got the price to slam way below. That was a huge move. But then in the same day, we got a tremendous amount of buyers to pick it right back up. And then the day after, the next, we got a huge bullish candle, and we closed very strong, really near the high right there. So for me, that can be a very, very good possibility around here. I don't know if we're going to push and then just hold, because there's going to be so many people around the 6K zone that are looking to buy. Just looking at the daily here, I think anyone who understands basic technical analysis understands this is a key level of support. Really, you can see it on any single chart, and almost anyone who follows the BTC market, or the crypto market for that matter, would understand the 6K bottom, especially if they were in the markets in 2018. It has been the lifeline for the most of 2018 before it absolutely cracked down and demolished that support. So this is going to be a key level. And what did I say before? These key levels do attract the price as well as repel it. So this means that the price is getting attracted to around this zone where demand is going to be stacked up. Now, I don't exactly know if we are going to pass, but there is going to be the descending trend line right here. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do get a long wick like we do see protruding out of the descending channel. I think it's safe to say for any shorts, this is a great place to take profit because of the key level of demand, and also that's a pretty massive move. There's a lot of zones of confluence around this area, and there has to be a pullback. We saw a massive move. So just looking at the simple market structure, we are getting our impulse move to the downside. We had our recovery, which is our exhaustion phase, and then we are going to make our next impulse move to the downside. Now, we don't know if we're going to hit that key level of support, or we're just going to dump absolutely down to our support zone. That obviously we do not know, but that's why we look at the shorter term time frames, because for me, I don't personally like to look months or even like many days ahead. I like to trade what's in front of me, and with the market giving so much new information, it's hard to analyze the long-term time frames, and I do like to look at the shorter-term 2-3 day swing trades or the longer intraday trades. That's kind of my sweet spot. So that's how I like to play the markets, and everyone's different, obviously, I know, but that has worked out for me so far. So I definitely like to stick with my trade system and just, grind it out every day, looking at the markets and seeing what I can find. So the current situation right now, we are underneath the key level of resistance, and we just did get a long wick up on the BTC USDT markets in Binance, and we will talk about that on the hour chart. But on this exchange, Bitstamp, it does not look like we got any bullish volume, which is not bad. I don't mind at all. But after talking about the daily, we can now talk about the 4 hour, where we're really going to get into the granular detail. The weekly, the daily, we talk about every single time, so we can't really discuss about it too much because we just go over the same stuff and it gets a little bit repetitive. But the 4 hour and hour chart, there's a lot happening and there's a lot more movement in the smaller time frames. So we do like to kind of stick to the 4 hour and hour to discuss more, because you guys would get bored if I just talked about the daily every single day. So let's go on to the 4 hour here. So this is that big pump that we saw that I talked about a little bit earlier. Let's get our tool right here. So we were short around here. I broke out even, not a problem. I had downside exposure because we did hold this resistance pretty well. And then once it did pop, I broke out even, no loss on that trade. And that's how I like to play it. If I have the option to have my stop loss basically at my entry, maybe a little bit high or lower, I guess, in this case for the fees, I'll definitely do that. I don't want to set it too early, but having that ability to completely eliminate risk off the table is a great way to reduce risk. So after that big pump, we saw a huge rejection. So we see there is more buy volume on the way up, but we saw more movement, so it makes sense. If this bullish candle didn't have that long wick there, and it was around the same size and distance it traveled, then I would be looking a little bit more bullish, because we saw a significant amount of buy volume come in compared to the sell volume with the same amount of distance traveled. But because the bullish candle has around twice as much movement, and it retraced all the way back down within the projection zone, I'm not discounting it as a bullish potential, but I'm still looking bearish. Now we are holding a pretty good base here. Now this reverse head and shoulders kind of threw off the base, because if this head was not there, it would be much better, in a better situation for us to see. Because if it wasn't there, we could easily look for a break and then a retest for a potential entry for another short. But because this reverse head and shoulders is there, we do have to take a little bit more risk on, because we know that this support has broken before multiple times. And just because it has doesn't mean that it will in the foreseeable future. If you had a very solid base there, it'd be easier, because there's a lot of stop losses around this zone. So then if we do get a break, the stop losses will get triggered, and then the price will fall further. The short sellers will attack the price even further, which would then drive the price even further down. So that would be the ideal situation. But unfortunately, because of this, there's going to be a lot less stop losses here. There might be some more at the lows here. I don't exactly know, but this situation makes it a little bit more challenging for us to really precisely enter our short position, or at least have a definitive move to the downside. Like, for example, we saw right here, once we passed this level of support, it was basically a dump right down. That huge move right there, that's what we're looking for, because there was a lot of stop losses right around here. Look at this whole situation, this whole sideways consolidation. I'm sure a lot of people bet that it was going to go up, right? People are accumulating here, people are accumulating here. And once we broke, they all needed to get out. Well, at least I would, to manage my risk. And that is what's happening right here. Now, this was unexpected, obviously, for me anyways, but I don't think you can expect a 20-30% move like that every time. That's just a little bit of fairy tale land if you're really using that as your risk reward average, because I think that's very unlikely. So just to talk about the recent price action again, so I am seeing a little bit more of a base get created, which is good for the bulls, not awesome for the short bias that I do have because of the weekly chart looking so bearish, but we will see how this price action turns out. So after the massive push to the upside with lots of volume, we closed within the projection zone. Now this projection zone has been our descending resistance for a very long time. We see it respected all throughout November, and then even at the start of December here, we're still holding this zone. So we can use this zone to really understand where our shift in trend is going to be. Now, I did say if we broke the projection, I'd be looking for longs, but what did we need first before we even thinking about longing? We need a confirmation that it's going to hold. This could literally be one single buyer placing a market order of like $10 million and the price moving up because the market order scoops up all the asks within the exchange, thus needing to get a higher price in order to fulfill the demand. Once that order is fulfilled, the market order is fulfilled, and let's say there's no more bullish confidence, or there's just no more buyers entering the market, well, the sellers are easily going to take control and push it right back down. And that's exactly what we saw here. The buyers pushed it all the way back up, hit our key level of resistance right around here, and then pushed it right back down within our projection zone. Now, once that happened, we had a little bit of a consolidation around this zone, kind of like we saw here, but in a shorter frame. And then we got a dump back down with pretty significant volume. We already talked about the volume already, but it's a little bit less, but we also know why, because of the distance. So now that we talked about the situation on the 4 hour, let's jump back to the 1 hour, or jump into the 1 hour and talk about the fine details of the price action. So this is that bullish push that I was talking about while making this trade. I saw like a massive push of volume, but then it came right back down. So that is another indication. Look at these two wicks right here. We saw this wick right here, and then the price held this zone. We do see, if we really zoom in, we are seeing a higher low situation here, and then we do see a bit of a horizontal zone, and then once we broke it, it absolutely plummeted right back down, and that shows a significant amount of sell volume. The next candle had a huge fight between the bears and bulls. It was a massive doji, just jumping back up and down, and then we've seen a consolidation since then, but the volume is still in volume distribution, meaning that it is very bearish. Volume accumulation is when there is more bullish volume than bearish. We see that around here, there's volume accumulation. We see bigger green bars than red bars. We see another green bar here, which then would make you assume that there could be another push, which exactly there was. Once there's more sell volume, we can see that all along here, we saw a push to the downside, breaking the support. So we do look at the volume pretty extensively, as well as the price action. I value the price action more, but I really take into account the volume, because that for me is a key sign of either bearish or bullish strength. I'm not going to take this into account too much, but it's still a valid zone that I'm going to draw on my chart and going to look at. So we have the first touch right here on the 1 hour, and then we have our second touch here with a type B, and then we have some type A's here, but then we have the price actually hold the zone with just the wicks protruding out, making the type A's there. So I put a projection here, sort of like we put a projection here, except I made it green because it's a sport. And that's going to be my ascending support, and it's squeezing the price closer together. Now we can see that this projection is going to be way more respected. This projection right here is going to be way more respected than the minor projection. So I'm going to assume that there is a higher chance of breaking the support than the resistance. Although when you see the price hitting the resistance or support more and more, so you see that there's a big gap here, and then you see the price hitting it more and more. So if we see the price break, hit this, and then we just continue to see it come closer to the apex, we could see a higher chance of it breaking the resistance. Now, the more times the price hits a trend line or a zone, yes, it is more respected, but with common sense, it has a higher chance of breaking, because the more times there's an opportunity for it to break, the more chance of it actually breaking. That's very common sense. So when we see the price touch a zone multiple times, getting closer to it, we can assume that it could potentially break. Now, we do see this very often with ascending trend lines, where we see big touches with wide distances apart, and then as the bulls weaken and the confidence gets weaker, the price hits the support more and more until it finally breaks, and then once it breaks, confidence is lost, and then the sellers take charge. Same goes to the opposite for descending zones. We see a lot of touches here, but we did not get a break. We saw that this was the zone that we were looking at for our support around the $8,600, $8,700 zone. We see a hesitation there too. And once we broke that zone, retested for a resistance in line with the descending projection, and then we made our meltdown down. So that's how I broke this down. And then we are seeing somewhat of a similar situation here, although we haven't had any confirmation of a break yet, although we are seeing, just from the price action, much more bearish volume than bullish. This candle, again, while we were making this video, it just occurred. We saw a huge bullish push to the upside, and while the hour ended, the bears just took control, pushing it right back down within our minor level of support and resistance. So this is our previous resistance, and we shorted right around here, and we were holding for a while. It broke. I was really looking for a continuation to the downside. I didn't add to my position or anything, so we were just waiting for it to move to the downside. Could not do it. It held the support, and then once it pumped back up, I had my stop loss, I think, just above here, so I didn't really lose any money. I covered fees and whatnot. So after that bullish push, I did not enter here because I think that there was a significant chance that we could see a bullish push to the upside, especially because this wick took out a lot of the short stop losses. I'm sure a lot of people had their stop losses either around here, because this is going to be a key level of support and resistance right around here. We see it as a support, resistance. If we just extend out a little bit more, resistance, resistance, support, resistance, and then this candle right here took out a lot of the shorts. So I didn't want to risk it at this point. I wanted to see a really strong bearish push. I talked about that in the Discord. I said I'm still bearish, but I don't have any confirmation that it's going to be a bearish push down, and I wanted to see two things. I wanted to see a strong bearish push in the price action, as well as a continuation in the volume, and that's exactly what we got. Once we got the huge bearish push to the downside with attributing increase in sell volume compared to the push down here, we saw the next candle still gain a significant amount of sell volume. So we see the first candle here is going to be that massive push to the downside, and then the next candle was a huge fight between the bears and the bulls, and the bears won. We see it closed red, which is going to give me an indication that the bears are in control and have more confidence in the market. After that, we saw this candle right here with a huge bullish push to the upside, but it again ended up in a bearish fashion, closing red, closing below the open, giving me even more indication that we are going to drop even more. So if we do break this ascending trend line here, we do have a couple levels of support. We have the 7K and then the 68 right around here. And once we pass that, we do have the very top of the head here. But just looking back at the weekly chart, I do think that if we do break this zone, we will definitely have a sure shot of kind of getting around this zone here. If we just see the distance, if we're just talking about market structure, it's a pretty simple market structure, and I think it's a very feasible one where we have a push. Let's just get our drawing here. The distance from here is probably not too far off. Like, let's just go here. And then obviously it's not going to go like this because it's in the log mode. So just looking visually, that's about right. I could definitely see it come around here. That's a very feasible situation to find ourselves in. So let's go back to the daily and then the hour chart. Just talking about it a little bit more. So we are seeing a bit of a decrease in sell volume. We can see that right here. But with the price just testing the support so much, like I said before, I am looking a little bit more bearish. If we do get the price to hold above this descending zone, which I'm not respecting too much, this is just a small zone that I put in. I'm not really using that too much as a key zone for me to execute on. But this horizontal zone is a zone that I'm going to be looking at. If we stick and hold above this zone, then I might be looking a little bit more bullish. But as long as we're kind of, if underneath the resistance, holding on to this zone around here. I'm definitely looking like we could see a dump back down, which would not be a bad situation to find ourselves in. So now that we've had our BTC analysis, there's not a whole lot more to talk about. We do have a short position, although I did stagger my stop losses, so I did get stopped out just on this wick here, but I still am in the short position. I have another stop loss set up here as well. I gave the price split stop losses because specifically for the reason of the potential volatility. I did say that in the Discord, and that's why I split my stop losses. I don't always split my stop losses if there is a very sure sign that it's a well-respected zone, but this is a minor zone, and I did expect some level of volatility, and that's why I split my stop losses. So if the price does come all the way back up and start breaking, I will take a loss. That's not a problem. Every trader takes losses, but if the price kind of stalls out and then falls, I'll still be in the green because this was a pretty small loss. I staggered them. I think my stop loss was just around here, I think, and then my last one is going to be around here. So I still am in my short trade. I don't have as much on my position, and if I do make it a winner, if it goes at least to around 2 to 1, so I think around here, if not to around here, I'll definitely make my money back, and then if it goes further, that's just gravy because then I'll be in profit. Now, as always, the price is not going to make a direct straight line. Sometimes it does on falls, like we could see in 2 hours, we fall a significant amount. Like right here, we fell basically 8% in 2 hours, so it does happen, but I think you can't expect the market to just absolutely dump or pump. I like to see waves of the market, and I like to see the market structure, and I don't like to hope in any trades. Like if you're expecting a massive pump like that, I don't know how many times you're really going to get it. I like to really understand the market trend and look at the bigger picture time frames and see the flow of the market. That's how I like to trade. So now that we've talked about BTC, we will now get into XRP. So let's close this out. We have some alts here. Matic is still not falling. I haven't entered any shorts yet. It's just continuing to climb. I don't mind not being in the trade on the way up. I do think it's overextended. They are dangerous words saying it's overextended, especially in the crypto market, because it could just keep on climbing. And I don't like to short and like jump in front of a train. But still keeping an eye out. I have the two trend lines here. We have the less ascending, and then with the more ascending, it would be nice if we saw another bounce on this little support here to validate it. Then I'd be really looking at the 2 levels of ascending trend lines here. So until that happens, not going to take any action on Matic. So let's continue on with XRP. So let's start off with the weekly, and then we will start from absolute scratch, just talking about the overall chart. Now we are on BTC USDT on the Binance exchange, so we don't have all the data, and we will just work with this. I know there is data here, but I'm just going to work with what we have here and discuss where we could potentially see. So on the weekly chart, we do see the trend still going down. We see lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, and lower lows as well. So the key zone of support that we've been holding for a long time until we finally broke it was this zone right around here, which is around the 28-29 cent zone. We see it being used as a support for a very long time, and then once we broke it, we tried to break once, failed, tried to break twice, failed again, and then we're seeing the lowest that we've seen in a very long time. So from the weekly, let's jump to now the daily chart and then discuss what we are able to see. So on the smaller time frames, you'll be able to see it a little bit more clear, but what I see is a very, very well-respected descending zone right around here. We saw it especially well-respected around here. We saw a gap because we needed an exhaustion, so this was the impulse move to the downside. We needed an exhaustion, and this was the exhaustion to give the price a little bit of room, or give the price breath and give the price some air before the next move to the downside, and I think that's what we're seeing right now. We do have a little support here from the wick right here, as well as the candles in the previous low. We can see that right here, but it does look like we are about to fail, and with BTC looking bearish as well, I would not be surprised if we saw a massive dump back down. We're not seeing really any amount of buy volume compared to the sell volume. We did see a pretty good amount of buy volume on the bounce up, but then as the price continued, we did notice that probably a lot of these buyers are just shorts closing their position after a very solid push to the downside. Remember, green does not instantly mean people are looking to buy and speculate that it's going to go up. It could mean that there are short sellers buying back the coins in order to pay themselves and take profits off because of that massive move. So just because you're seeing green doesn't mean, oh my gosh, there's going to be buyers in the area. It could just be sellers taking profit, which is a very, very different aspect. So we see a nice little base here, and let's just make that green because it is going to be our support. And we can see that the price did try to push up. We're getting held down. You can see this resistance a lot more clear when we go to the 4 hour. So let's do that. All right, and let's get our projection. Obviously, this isn't very, very well cleaned. We need to clean this up pretty well here. Move this up a little bit more, and then we will be using a projection, but that is a pretty clear chart. Let's just get our projection zone right around here, and then we can get two, but what I'm really looking at is this little poke right here, which is out of the trend line, and I want to cover that. So what do? I use a projection in order to cover that zone. And what do we have here? We're seeing a very solid base. We see the first level of support here, and then we're seeing another support and another support while the price is still getting sell pressure to the downside. Now the price is coming towards the apex, which is just around here. So I wouldn't be surprised if the price did bump up a little bit higher coming towards this zone here, but in the end I do still think that we could get it down. We did get a significant amount of buy volume, so this is showing more volume accumulation, because if the price did move to the upside and then there was more sell volume going back down, we'd see that there's volume distribution. But like with BTC, we do see that there's a long wick on the bullish candle, and then we see the bearish candle close basically right at the bottom. So the green wick right here has a lot more movement, which means it makes sense that there's more volume. With movement, there has to be transactions, which is volume. And with this much of the distance traveled from the open all the way up here, we can see that with more distance traveled requires more volume. So it makes sense. You got to not only compare the volume bars, but also the distance the price traveled. Very similar with BTC. We got 1 4 hour candle with a doji, and then we saw a dump soon after, with the close literally being basically at the very bottom of the candle. The next candle did try to push further down, but then we did get held up with the wick protruding more to the bottom. And then the next candle after, we did get, like BTC, a pump up, but then the sellers had a lot of confidence and pushed it right back down, and that's what we're seeing right now. So let's continue on from the 4 hour and talking about the 1 hour time frame. So let's zoom out a little bit more and clean this zone up a little bit. So let's use another rectangular zone. We see it's a very, very key zone of support right around here. Let's draw that in. And it's going to be just around there. So then that was the previous support, new resistance, right? And then we're also seeing the last level of support right here. So we could extend this a little bit further out, but I'm not going to. It'll just look a little bit too messy. And then we have another little support around here, just connecting the lows. We can see that. And then the last level of support is around here. Not really going to get too into it. This is not an execution zone. This is just the last level where demand could be located, and it's the lowest point on this chart. We can also draw a trend line that is connecting this point here to this point right here. We see, if we just make it green, this is the first anchor point, and then we see a type B. So the body of the candle is closing right on the zone, but we see the wick project out of it, and then this is going to be a type A. So it is a valid zone. We have the anchor point and then two zones that are going to validate this trend line. So we could use this zone as our new support area, which is going to be right around here. So now what we're going to see is the price squeezing closer together. So we see the sellers pushing it down, and then we see buyers pushing it up. The apex is going to be right around here. So I'm not too sure which way we're going to go. My bias on BTC is going to be bearish. So the general market bias for me is going to be bearish. But obviously, if we don't see any break, we're not going to enter. We need to see a confirmation before we enter. If we do actually see the price kind of come and hover around here and actually break this zone, I will be looking for a retest around the 22-21 cent range, but I really want to see the bulls really strongly push the price up and give me a confirmation that it's going to hold there, ideally on the 4 hour chart, at least on the 1 hour chart. You can see right here, we haven't even had a break in this zone yet at all. and I would need to see a break in the zone, hold on the 1 hour, at least maybe on the 4 hour, and then a nice little retest to validate this area as a new support, and then we'll be blasting off. We do have a little support right here. Bit messy, and we can see that right around here. So that's where we might bounce. I don't exactly know, and it is kind of messy. We could even push it back down to here, but that's kind of the situation I'm looking at in XRP. So this projection zone is very similar to BTC. So if we look at just this situation right here on the 4 hour, and then we quickly switch to BTCs, it's looking pretty darn similar, right? We see a projection back down, it's getting pushed down by the sellers, and then we see a gap, and then we see again with the resistance pushing it back down. And then let's just go back to XRP. Same thing, we see a respected zone all along here. We see a gap, and then now we're seeing this zone getting respected as well. And I think what we could do is, just for visual sake, we can make it a little bit different. Instead of capturing this zone, we'll capture the touch here, as well as the touch here and the touch here. So now we have a bit of a more squeezed in price, where the resistance right here is also in line with the projection resistance. So we could, if we are looking long, have a little bit less of a move before we get a pullback, and then we get our move to the upside. So that's what I'd be looking at for longs if we do that. But like always, we have to wait for confirmation. We're not going to just enter because we think it looks good. We have to make sure that we're getting all the signals we can from the market before we make any decisions. So I hope you guys found this analysis enjoyable, entertaining, informative, educational, somewhere in between. That's why we do it. If you're interested in trading cryptocurrencies, we'd love to have you join our Discord. It's absolutely free to join. We talk about a lot of the alts as well as BTC all day, really, I'm not kidding, all day, which is really good for updates if you are on your phone, don't really want to look at a chart. If you are just wanting to stay updated with the market news and the market price movements, that's definitely the place to be. So as always, I hope you liked this market analysis, and until next time, happy trading.